Welcome to Raw Living Radio, where world-renowned leading-edge speakers, doctors, scientists, authors, and lifestyle experts share highly valuable weekly coaching tips, recipes, and empowering information about adding more raw, living, plant-based foods to your diet to improve your health, decrease your eco footprint, and raise your spirits. And now, your hosts, Mistress Hava and Clementine Libre.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to another week of Raw Living Radio. We are so thankful that you are joining us today for this super exciting show, and we are sending you our love. Hello, 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 and we hope you're having, as our guest would say, the best day ever. And with that, I'm going to say hello to Hava. How are you today, my dear?
I'm lovely, darling. You just stole my intro for David.
We should have talked about that.
But it'll still be the best intro ever. Oh, I'm doing good, love. Happy full moon in Leo today.
Oh,
and yes, energy's high. I'm so excited to be here with you and our amazing guest. And like we said last week, Raw Living Expo is ramping up for its return to Sedona, July 24th through the 27th. Yeah, go to rawlivingexpo.com, everybody, and check out what's happening. And, very exciting. Laura Shreya Fox is off to the races again. So, yeah, we're very excited to see you all in July in Sedona.
Awesome.
Yes. All right. Well, let's get to our amazing guest. You know, most of our listeners, David Wolfe needs no introduction, and as you already heard, and you probably already know, he's having the best day ever. I love that. It's pretty much become part of our vernacular these days. But for those of you new to this rock star of superfoods and longevity, he's the author of many of the classic books on health and wellness, including some of my favorites, such as Eating for Beauty, The Sun Food Success Diet, Naked Chocolate, Amazing Grace, and his most recent release, Longevity Now, which presents a multifaceted approach to rejuvenation, beauty, and radiant health. And he's a very, very highly sought-after health and personal success speaker, having presented close to 2,500 live lectures in the last 20 years. And with over 20 years of experience and understanding of the inner workings of the human body, David is a true living master of what it means to walk the talk on the road to higher and higher levels of natural beauty, vibrant health, and peak performance. And joining us from Noni Land in Hawaii, thank you, David, for being with us today.
Awesome. Great to be with you guys, and we're going to have a great show. In fact, it's going to be the best show ever.
Well, listen, I love doing my research on folks, and you're actually one of the people that inspired me on my raw food journey, and I met you many years ago. And I pulled out my autographed copy of one of the books besides Marilyn and Harvey Diamond's book, Fit for Life, that you wrote called, along with Arlen's and Deanie, Nature's First Law, The Raw Food Diet. This is probably one of the classics on raw food, and I wanted to touch in with you, and of course, we see where you got your name, avocado, as you're sitting naked in the tree. An avocado tree. I just love this book. Ronnie Landis, who, of course, you know very well, is my housemate here, and I pulled the book out, and we had such a fun giggle about where you've been and where you've come from. And I want to touch a bit on this book because it really is so intense in its presentation. Every chapter ends with cooked food is poison, and I love the evolution all of us have made on this, very strong journey into raw foods and knowing how amazing we feel and how much it changes. And I'm wondering for you, if you touch a bit on your evolution from this very, strong presentation of raw foods to where you're at today.
Well, I guess we should start out with where cooked food is poison came from. We were having a juice party at my cousin's house. It was probably 1994, and it's 1994. So we're talking over 20 years ago, and we were just like super high on juice. And we were going through about we must have been doing about easily 100 ounces of juice, like vegetable juice. When we first got turned on to raw foods, and we were like just going berserk.
Yeah.
And the phone rang, And my cousin picked up the phone and he said, "Cooked food is poison. How may I help you?" And that's how it started. that's how that started. And it just became like just a classic of all time.
Yeah.
And I guess so. It was back in the beginning. We were like basically the original vision I had for the three of us was we would be like a superhero trio, kind of like Kiss, in rock and roll, but obviously like with a different angle. And then we would each have our own superhero names, and so Steve Arlen was Captain Wheatgrass, and my cousin was Rocker and Vegetable Man. And then we were trying to come up with a name for me, and we were kind of going back and forth. And then my cousin brought over his journal, and he opened up his journal, and there was like some various names he'd come up with, like Battle Apple, that was one of them, and then Super Wamango, that was another one, and then Fats Avocado. And so we were like, that's it, Fats Avocado, like Fats Domino, and that's how that started. So the actual name is not Avocado, it's Fats Avocado. For the old timers who remember back in the old days. And so I used to actually sign. If you have an old book, you'll see it signed Fats Avocado.
That's right, it
Fats
is.
Avocado Wolfe.
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's great.
That's so funny. So
and you're pretty much, you're still probably living pretty naked in an avocado tree these days out in Noni Land, I imagine.
Well, I had to be pretty naked yesterday. It was so hot, and definitely feeling it today too. It's really just a smoking hot morning, and that was last night. Even last night in my room was just naked in my room because it was just too hot. So we've got a couple of the crew here, like Nick Good, who likes to, Sir Good, the superhero. He likes to just work in the yard and completely naked. He does that a lot.
Your guys' book, your guys' book, Amazing Grace, was another big game changer for me. Nick's book, Amazing Grace. I highly recommend that book to everybody.
Great book, thank you. And Nick, that kind of bonded Nick Good and I together. We've had some absolutely outrageous adventures together. Although I haven't seen him in about a year and a half. When he's been in Noni Land, I've been gone, and when I've been here, he's been gone. So we'll probably cross paths later in the spring.
Beautiful. And you were saying who else is out there with you?
Oh, I've got the whole crew in right now. We got a bunch of crew from the mainland, so we're doing a big land project on Wednesday, which includes the planting of about 40 of our best cacao variety, the best variety we've got here. We're going to put 40 of them in behind the house. And so, it's a whole hillside that we've been waiting to plant up. I finally got the right crew to just kind of take that jungle down a little bit so we can get the cacaos in, and the whole thing will come back up again. Then we use the natural jungle that's there as biomass to feed the cacaos. So we don't go in and like mow down a jungle. We let the jungle stay there, but we basically trim it down to like head height or lower, and then we go in and find spots to put in cacaos, and then we use the new growth from that old jungle biomass through a chop and drop permaculture strategy to go out there and then just feed all the cacaos that. That's how we've done this whole farm, actually, was we've just taken what was already here and we just utilized it in a way that I think was really, really the best way to do it. Just instead of cutting things down, we just, wiping things out, we basically just chop things and use them as food for other things.
Right. It makes a lot more sense.
And is that chocolate that you're growing there, is the cacao you're growing there, is that what you're using for Sacred Chocolate? You're in Steve's company?
Yes. We have used this in Sacred Chocolate for years, actually, the chocolate that's come from here. But only in the last year have we had enough chocolate production here to really actually produce our own chocolate bars that are entirely from here. And I've got a great announcement to make, and that is I was coming up the stairs the other day when I first got back home, and the wafting smell of vanilla, the aroma just hit me, and I was like, whoa. And then I literally looked over, and there was a ripe vanilla, vine-ripened vanilla. None, and I'm talking none of the vanilla out there today that you buy, even if it's like, the whole vanilla pod, is vine ripened. All of it is picked premature and then put out in the sun for two hours, then put in a box for the rest of it for 22 hours, then back in the sun for 2 hours and put in a box for 22 hours for about 6 weeks in order to cure it. So
Oh,
I
wow.
have right now, my possession is actually in my hand at this very moment, vine ripened vanilla, which will go into the Noniland chocolate bar. So the next Noniland chocolate bar will contain not only Noniland cacao beans, it will also contain Noniland vanilla grown in cacao trees, and then it will also have Noniland honey in it. So, step by step, we're getting there.
When's that going to be available?
In about 6 weeks.
All right.
Wow.
Excellent.
That's awesome.
Excellent.
So that keeps me excited.
And then will people be able to purchase the vanilla on the Longevity Now site?
No, it's not enough production, so it's just basically for friends, family, and for Sacred Chocolate at this stage. Although I am getting deeper and deeper into it, and I know how to do it now. Like I was out this morning, I had 3 vanilla flowers out. This is the time of year when vanilla flowers. So you have to hand pollinate here. So every vanilla bean actually has to be hand pollinated because the natural pollinator isn't in Hawaii. It's in Central America, the natural Melipona bee that pollinates vanilla. So I just went and did it by hand. And, I could set it up for big production of vanilla, and I may do it, but it's not set up that way now.
I've heard it's the same for cherimoya. Was it cherimoya that I heard was the same way if you're growing it like in California?
It could be. I mean, there's definitely the Annona family, like Rollinia, soursops, cherimoyas, atamoyas, that whole family, and pawpaws in North America, needs its natural pollinator, although sometimes, like with soursop where we are, we can get by. Soursop, by the way, is also called graviola. You may have heard of graviola as a strategy against cancer. So it's actually the young leaves of the soursop that's used for that use. And the pollinator is not here, but it still does get pollinated naturally here by ants. So, we're okay on that one. But Rollinia, we have to hand pollinate. And, the same is true, if we're growing atamoyas or sugar apples or some of the more exotic varieties of that family, we'd have to hand pollinate.
Awesome. So David, today when our team was promoting the show on all of the foodie groups on Facebook, something that was very common among each page was all the color. And you really just don't see that on every page that you look in when you're clicking around in Facebook. But every single one of those foodie pages was just chock full of color. And I know a lot of people are excited to hear more about the lines you're drawing between food, color, nutrition, and how it is all, has such deeper meaning for us, but also, that something we can learn so simply in a way too. Can you start touching on that a little bit?
Well, I have been looking into colors as a code or colors as a message, basically, of what the food does for you for a lot of years. And I first got the hint on that from the black foods and their Jing supporting qualities, longevity inducing qualities, and red foods, which are, very volatile. They're like, it's blood and heart, but also there's a volatility like flame. Those are, that goes back to ancient Taoist teachings about the colors of food. Black foods are longevity foods, red foods are heart and blood, but volatile. And then I started to go a little bit deeper to find out really what the code of every color is, and then eventually getting the whole color code broken down, and then going to the next level, which is, an amazing area, which is what causes the color and what are the compounds that are colored in foods. So, for example, quercetin is yellow. It can never be another color. It is actually the color yellow. Mm-hmm. If you get what I mean. There can be other things that are the color yellow, but those things will always be the color yellow. So this was a real discovery. We're so used to painting things or using RGB to produce colors on our computer screen or our television that we don't realize we've completely lost track of where our colors come from. I mean, completely. Like the difficulty of producing a blue dye has been completely lost to Western culture. We do not realize how many thousands of years of research was required to actually produce blue colored dyes in the world, in different cultures, whether it was China or India or Europe or North America or South America. All of that stuff, the depth of colors, what they mean, the pigments of color, what they do, the health benefits of the different colors of our food, all of that is being put together as a book that I'm writing. that I was gonna put it out April 7th, but I just backed it off because it's too big. It's like 600 pages currently, and I still have more to add. So I think I'm going to actually make it into an encyclopedic book that's
nice.
like it's really a scientific reference book.
Yeah, it's a colorful desk reference book. Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense too, because wasn't it in like the 16th century or something, only royals would wear like the blue colors and purples and things like that. Nobody who was a common person wore clothing that was brightly colored, and especially not purple or blue. So that's an interesting thing I had never thought of.
Yeah, it's really, we're standing on the shoulders of so many giants who've come before us. It's really only in the 20th century that colored clothing, all the colors, became available. Before that, things like blue were very difficult to produce. Reds were difficult to produce as well. I mean, the main red dye in the world for most of the world's history was cochineal, which is a type of parasite that lives on beaver tail cactus or Nepali cactus. And then those would be dried and crushed and mixed with water, and they produce a red dye. That was a huge thing, in the discovery of the New World for Europeans, was the availability, the mass availability of red dye was just like a huge discovery.
Wow. Back when it was done right, it was all plant dye.
Mhm. Well, in that case, it was an insect dye.
Well, yeah.
Which you do see in some products. If you look closely, some food products contain carmine, C-A-R-M-I-N-E, that's actually, it's the code for cochineal, which is the red pigment in the cochineal.
Right. Yeah, I remember reading something about that in Fast Food Nation. I think it was about, looking into how they colored things and how they flavored things. And red, they were talking about it was insects. I remember that. And then the flavor for strawberry was like the chemical way that they wrote it down was like 3 pages long.
It's so, this is why I think, we became so reactionary, and it's why, we're so into what we're into, is because the food industry went so far too far. It's not even low consciousness. It's no consciousness at all.
Right. Yeah. And we have become very reactionary, or very, very spot on that. And so what were you saying?
Well, I was just saying that it's actually led to a very interesting development of like people who do not trust the food system at all. Nothing. Absolutely none of it. That's kind of where we come from. You're asking me like the background that I came from. That's really the background, is like when I realized that the food system cannot be trusted at all. None of it. All conventional food is cheating. It's all based on like bottom dollar, cutting corners. That's where we all come from, basically. That's kind of our MO.
Right. Yeah, and it's true. I mean, even when you really look at it closely, even in the grocery store, for your better choices of organic fruits and veggies, most of it is not vibrating at a high level because it's been, picked too early, or, who knows what kind of corners they cut and still get to call it certified organic. And that's why you notice such a huge difference between when you're in like a health food store produce section and at a farmer's market, because you're being introduced at a farmer's market to food that, some of it is going to really call to you, and chances are that food was grown in quite a different way than anything you're going to get at a grocery store.
Definitely, for sure. That you were asking me about things that have changed for me over the years in terms of like, how from the old days, the cook food is poison days, to now. One of the things that's really changed for me is I really have more of a Rudolf Steiner feeling about the food supply, and this is what Rudolf Steiner said in 1922. Actually, one of his students asked him and said, why your teachings are so amazing, Rudolf. Everything you're doing is just so incredible. We've applied your principles of agriculture, your principles of education, and it works. And it's just incredible what you're doing and who you are. But why is it that everybody doesn't get it? What's the resistance about? What's the whole, why do people want to get rid of you? Why do they want to destroy you? What is it about the human race that causes this? And then Rudolf Steiner's response was very interesting. he said it's a problem of nutrition, and that basically the subtle forces, cosmic forces, ether forces, astral forces, forces that are alive in water, are not fully contained in the food, and therefore the spirit can't come fully alive into the body. And that's what's really causing, like, the wars, the famine, the greed, the whatever. And to us at a very surface level, it's like, oh, it's just deficient in trace minerals. Oh yeah, it doesn't taste as good. But really, like, over the years, I've really dove into more of the subtle energies, like the astral forces, the forces that come in from the cosmos, from the stars, from the heavens, the outer planets, the forces that come in from the inner planets, the sun, the moon, Mercury, and Venus. All of those things together, plus the energies that come, the telluric forces that come from out of the earth itself, and then all with the right intent and all with love. A deficiency in any or all of that is what causes problems with our food.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's out of the original matrix, as my neighbor likes to say, and then you end up with commercial food, addictions, all this weird stuff that goes on because the food is not containing the subtle, cosmic, ethereal, astral, water forces, telluric forces, and in its totality, and that ultimately is the reason why we're in trouble.
Right. That macro and micro harmony, is out of balance.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we're out of balance. We're on like one food, or we think we live on 3 foods, or or whatever. And that's also a difficult strategy, is to try to pull it together with very little food variety, even if it is good quality.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
go
go ahead, Hannah.
Well, I was going to go back to one of your first books, The Sun Food Success Diet, and you have the triangle, and it's the leafy greens and the sweet fruits and the fats. Would you say that still holds up for you as far as what our most optimum way of eating is, if we can have access to those foods?
Well, I think what we're getting into there is, like, basically raw foodists tend to eat too much sugar or too much fat, and the greens are kind of a neutralizer, that sit in between. That's the basic idea there, and that's just very important. It's like you've got to have the neutralizer in the middle to kind of neutralize any excesses. Like, if you're suddenly digging into almond butter, you better be doing it with celery, or you're going to get out of balance really quick.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the core idea, and that it will always hold true. It's kind of it's an instinct. But then there's the whole issue of protein. How much protein do you need? And some people do need a lot of protein. They need a lot of protein to stabilize their blood sugar, and that's a very strong consideration, I think, for most people. There's only about 10% of the population who can live on a high carbohydrate diet. And most of the population either needs high fat, high protein, and or high both.
Do you think that has a lot to do with the regions people are living in? If they live in a really cold climate, or if they're in a tropical climate?
Yeah, it has to do with your altitude, the region you live in, your genetic history. It has to do with your availability of what you got around you. It has to do with your gardening skills. I mean, there's so much that goes on. So that, the people ask me all the time, like, what's the ideal diet for humankind? And the answer is there isn't one. There might be an ideal diet for you, but there is no. We cannot generalize and say this is the right diet for everybody, because then we're dealing with the biology, we're dealing with the energy of the soul coming into the body, which can create a totally different diet, totally different diseases, like, the split personality issue, where there's 2 souls in one body, and they have different diets, different diseases in the same body. I mean, that has to be factored in as well.
Wow.
Right, and it does come down to a more of a how than a what. You talked about this years ago. Correct me if this doesn't stand up, but we're scavengers. We are meant to eat and forage what is around our immediate environment. Would you say that's
well?
True?
It's this whole issue of nutrition. I'm just going to go back to Rudolf Steiner again. It's really an issue of subtle and cosmic forces. So, for example, food that is wild, like wild chaga on a tree, has a lot of cosmic forces in it, because it's been sitting in that tree oftentimes for 15 years or longer before somebody comes along and breaks it off and says, oh, I'm going to make a tea out of this or something. So what Rudolf Steiner said about that is that when a plant learns how to survive a winter and can kind of bark itself off and hang in there through the seasons, like a chaga is growing on a birch, it's on that birch through all the seasons, through all the different light conditions, through all the different atmospheric conditions. It starts taking in the energy of the outer planets and the stars and the galaxies and more the cosmos. And so that's why, like, a wild chaga cannot in any way be compared to lettuce. Lettuce it's an annual. It has very little cosmic forces in it. Even if you grow it biodynamically, it's better, but it can never rack up to what a wild ginseng would be or a wild chaga would be, because they've been out there absorbing all the energies over years and years of time.
Right,
and I think that's really the issue. It's getting back to original matrix, and that means wild food. It means food grown with all of the biodynamic kind of feelings and insights there. And I'm not talking about strict biodynamic farming. I'm talking about with what Rudolf Steiner actually said, which is study his system and then see if you can improve it.
Mm. Makes a lot of sense.
So I imagine that's what you're doing out at Noni Land.
Yeah, I'm also doing that, my farm in Canada. That's what we've been doing too, which is, much harder farming situation there than you would have, in Hawaii. I mean, Hawaii is super, this place still has mana. It's like this place has energies that are present in the food, in the water, in the rocks, in the atmosphere. It's saturated in mana here. And nobody knows what that means until you get off a plane here in Hawaii and then you start eating the avocados on the side of the road and you're like, what is going on? This is better than any avocado I've ever had.
Yeah. The adamantine particles exchange going on.
Yeah, it's like that. It's the adamantine particles and all the subtle factors that, basically what it is, it's young Earth, because Hawaii is relatively new on the Earth. Whereas like where I'm at in Canada is very, very old. In fact, I'm actually sitting on probably the oldest spot on the Earth, the Canadian Shield over there. And then the Hawaiian, islands are probably some of the youngest spots on the Earth. The volcano obviously on the Big Island is just spewing out new land momentarily. And so that new Earth, that new silicates and all that stuff that's coming up has strange matter in it. Maybe that describe, what's going on with the mana of Hawaii is it has more ormus. It has more of this fresh, young mineral material coming out that immediately gets pulled into the life force of water and rock and stone and plants and animals and air and all that.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
So, David, you were talking about how well we are doing nutritionally, having a lot to do with, where we're located and our altitude, and then also our genealogy. Can you give us an example? Like, what have you found out about your own genealogy, and what did that tell you about how you should eat? I know you mentioned something at the Women's Wellness Conference about finding some Greek roots and things like that, and kind of tapping into it. How do you apply that to how you nourish yourself?
Well, I'm Mediterranean, so it's like I'm genetically Mediterranean, and therefore things like olive oil, wild herbaceous substances like rosemary or oregano or thyme, or those little kind of herbaceous little things that are common in the Mediterranean, foods like cucumbers, that stuff is like, that's the best food for me, for sure. When I start getting into tropical food like coconut, I like coconuts. I like coconut water, but I I can drink olive oil, but I can't have too many coconuts because I'm not Polynesian, at least not in many lifetimes. So I don't have that same ability to really just thrive on that kind of food. Maybe coconuts and other tropical foods. I have to kind of like tone it down a little bit and mix it down with other things so I don't get too much of it. Otherwise, I'll get an allergy to it. That's what I've learned about myself. So you get me on any kind of Mediterranean cuisine, it'd be just the best news ever. Or even growing Mediterranean food. I also have a very strong, natural inclination to growing Mediterranean food. Other things I want to say about that is that basically like, you have to kind of factor in your genealogy. You have to factor in, where your ancestors come from on the planet. But that's not the end all. It's just one factor, and other factors are important too. Where are you right now?
Right.
The whole eat local thing is a great idea, but it's eat local to your climatological region. It doesn't mean eat stuff coming out of the sidewalk in New York City.
Well, and it also, just like you said, some people can move to Costa Rica and just, thrive on only fruit and coconut, whereas somebody who maybe has a different genealogy would move there and not do so well, even though they're in that climate. That's not, it's only one factor, like you said.
Right, exactly. It's just one factor, and it's an important factor and an interesting one. And there's just many things that you need to look at too. Another thing that I would just kind of reference is past life incarnations, and I get this all the time. Basically, first of all, the whole idea of that we just get one life and that's it, and then we're gone and swept off the planet. It's very atheistic, and it's very, very low vibrational. It kind of just bad energy vibration. Like whoever dreamt that up was just really in a bad space.
Doom and gloom. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very typical of the human race. Lowest common denominator, really, really low vibrational, really, really poor spiritual kind of concepts, and just it's absurd. So you got to get your energy and you literally use nutrition to help yourself to get your spirit fully alive in your body, so that you just get out of those kind of weird aberrations of consciousness and get more into truth. Right. And for example, if all of us right now are thinking okay, do I really reincarnate? First of all, the idea of total annihilation doesn't feel good. So therefore, it's probably not in alignment with truth. But the idea, as soon as you check out of here, boom, you're back into a body reincarnating elsewhere or later in time or whatever, kind of feels good. If you tune into that, you're like, well, that'd be kind of cool. If as soon as I check out of here, all of a sudden I'm reincarnating as a baby, some other time, place, whatever. That could kind of be the best ever. So just from that logic of it doesn't feel good to believe in complete annihilation versus it does feel good to believe in reincarnation, that right there ought to kind of give you a hint.
Right. Well, it's kind of sense? Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a feel when you check in, when you tune in with your heart and you ask what's true. And then also, some people will look at nature and see, death. And others will look at it with a different perception and see, oh, do you see how that is now creating this, and this is more life, and it just keeps going on and on and on. And, even, what's beyond what we can even see. So, yeah. Yeah,
and another thing, too, is the reason why I was bringing that thing up about reincarnation is that has to be considered, too. Your incarnational history affects you. It affects your karma. It affects your diet. It affects your destiny. It has an effect on you. It's not a guarantee, or it's not you can't get out of it. It has an effect on you, and it will affect your diet. So that needs to be considered as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Very much so. It's interesting. It's taking me. I'm having some interesting reflection right now that you're saying that. So I won't go into it though.
So,
what
David,
were you going to say?
Well, I'm wondering, David, if I can go back to one of your first books, Nature's First Law, and it's such a brilliant treatise on raw foods. How much today do you feel like humans should only be eating a raw food diet, that there's really no nutrition in cooked food? Are you still on that page these days?
No, I'm not on that page.
Okay.
It's very childish, actually. It's a thing you do when you're 21 years old. You know?
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because we're all very aware of the importance of really making raw foods, fresh foods, whole foods, as fresh as possible, as much as a part of our diet as possible. So, thanks for that.
And again, you got to be aware too. It's of the subtle forces that are at work there, and make sure that your diet includes wild food, raw food, foods that are grown with a lot of love and a lot of intention, and out of all the food available in the world, basically that's biodynamic food today. If you want to go for something that's commercially available, it's got to be biodynamic to have all those subtle energies, or at least a good fraction of them in there. But ultimately, homegrown food is really going to be where it's at.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. We all got to get growing, people, and support one another in this. That's why shows like this and what you're doing, and so many people have stepped up to do, and they're all showing up in their own unique way and spreading this message, because one person is not going to hear it from another, whereas they'll hear it from someone else, and it'll finally click that, hey, we do really have to get back to this, and we really need to begin to support it, and focusing our attentions in that area and down that path of how can we support growing more food. Even if I'm not doing it myself right now, that doesn't mean I have to quit and give up and give away my power. That just means, okay, what can I focus on supporting that's in favor of that and on my path to, growing all my own food. So it's great that we can all be here to inspire people in that area.
And we have so much more available to us now back when, David, you and I were, all raw and it was the way to be. We've got such a more balanced way now. We have these superfoods. I didn't know about raw cacao. I didn't know about goji berries. None of this was really part of my vernacular or my diet back then. So we're so blessed to have all of the Chinese herbs and how to make tonics and these superfoods that are really one of the cornerstones of our modern diet as well.
One of the reasons why I like superfoods so much for the future is because of the subtle forces of superfoods. The power of cacao is really profound. I mean, it is profound. Just drinking the cacao juice. I just went out and pollinated some vanillas and then brought some cacaos back in the house just before getting on with you guys, and then squeezed them, opened up all the cacao pods and poured all the fresh beans into a cheesecloth, and then squeezed it and squeezed the pulp out of it and then drank that.
Oh, wow.
Jeez. Whoa.
Well, I've never heard of that. Sounds yummy.
It's actually beyond any. It's so ridiculously good. It might be the best fruit juice ever. It's in that zone.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So that's superfood. That's the power of it. It's like grass is one thing, but chocolate is another. You know what I mean? It's like how many subtle forces, how much energy you're going to find in grass on the front lawn versus like a chocolate tree. It's kind of obvious.
Mhm.
And so I'd love to go back to color here. You talked about black foods being very grounding. What other adjective did you use to describe black?
Well, black has to do with Jing, longevity. It has to do with primordial force or forces, like you are. The word you are is an old Anglo-Saxon word worth researching and looking into, but that has to do with the primordial energies of black foods.
So
you look at
Shilajit would be a good example of that, right?
Yeah, that's a very good example of it. Another really good example of it is the olives, because the olives naturally will, if they're allowed to ripen, this is that vine ripen thing again, they're allowed to completely ripen all the way to their natural color, they are black. Now, the same is true with vanilla. If vanilla is allowed to ripen, vine ripen, and go all the way to its natural color, it turns black. Chaga, black. So that's a message. It's a very powerful message. It's a very rare thing, actually, in the world to have a black food. When you look at those foods, you find out that they are the most powerful. For example, the power of chaga is it's pretty much immediate. When somebody gets into chaga and they start making it, it becomes a stock. It becomes the basis of broth. It becomes the basis of all their liquids. It's just something that's always there.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm just starting to get into chaga now, and very interesting exploration. So I'm excited to learn more. How about you, Hava?
Chaga's been I'm very into all of the tonic herbs, and I have the real honor of working in a facility that processes fresh herbs. including, mushrooms, and we get passion flower over from Hawaii, David, and, we are making really incredible tinctures and glycerates, and so that's been a huge part of my life. And I have to say, chaga has been there for a long time. I wouldn't even think about not having it as, along with the Peruvian olives, I found them very grounding and very nourishing. And so I love my cordyceps and the chaga. And David, you have a book on chaga, don't you?
Yes, I basically had to write that book because nobody else would. So I thought, well, I guess I should do it. And I'm really happy about that book. I'm really proud of it, and I'm really proud of the whole thing of chaga and the whole message of it, and just how it just totally came into my life and transformed my life, and what it's been for me and my friends and family. It's just been an incredible addition to our lives. It's one of those magical super herb substances.
Let me ask you a question, Dave. I'm going to ask you about chaga. I got a big piece from someone you know well, Jeffrey Botticelli, who's a fellow chocolatier, and he gave me a big piece of chaga that, of course, I pulverized as much as I could and made tea out of it, made a few rounds of it. How long will that keep if I keep it refrigerated?
It can last for days. I mean, if you keep it refrigerated, airtight, it could last for a week. A lot of people will do that. They'll actually make a chaga tea and then refrigerate it and keep it as a stock. You know what I mean by that, like a base for a broth or a base for a soup. So it can last for a week. It's amazing, actually. These great mushrooms like chaga and reishi, they're actually very powerful antifungals as well as antimicrobials, but in particular antifungals. So they do have natural antibiotic properties.
It's an interesting thing to think of, too, because you think of them as fungi.
Yeah.
Or fungi.
It's kind of like a human versus a rat. You know what I mean? It's like these are the king and queen of the whole fungi kingdom. They know how to deal with candida, of yeasts, and other things that are lower on the chain of being. It's kind of like a human versus a rat. It's like you want to get rid of a rat, you get a human on the case. They'll get rid of that rat.
Interesting analogy. Thank you. What were you saying, Hava?
Oh, I was just going to say I love reishi. I've actually been taking a little handful of some of the herbs before bed, doing ashwagandha and reishi and Siberian ginseng, and those three I've been really loving before sleep with some honey.
Sounds wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're definitely. I'm kind of popping them all day. These beautiful gifts from the mushroom and herbal family.
So, David, would you like to take some questions from some of our listeners who've been writing into the Facebook event? And we've got all kinds of really interesting stuff here if you're up to it.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got some good questions. Ask the white question. We got to lead with that one. That one's hilarious.
Yeah. Okay. We'll lead with that one. This is from listener Doris, who says that she would like to know, even though that snow is white with all its potent minerals and properties, is there any color in snow, or is white all of the colors mixed together and reflected from its surroundings? And with all of the pollution in the sky, would you still recommend ingesting snow for its medicinal qualities, or should I just roll in it for negative ionization?
White's an anomaly too. The whole thing about white, because if the substance, like I'm thinking of bougainvillea, those bougainvilleas can exist in two different kind of color groups, either the orange, reddish orange, or they can be like reddish purple. That's it. They can only be those two colors, except they can be white. So, when there's no quote unquote color pigment, then it's white. And so it's like a pigment that has no color. It's like a weird thing. I don't understand it. I mean, it's one of those things that's like, it's an anomaly. It doesn't make sense. So I really can't answer that. I mean, whites generally have to do with similar things to blacks. They're primordial, their origin, they're immunological. And yet, you'll and like, for example, one of the most powerful like Jing substances is the gecko tail. The tail of geckos used highly in Chinese medicine, and And many times when you look at a gecko's tail, I've got geckos in my room. They live behind the pictures on my wall. You'll see that they're white and black, like a zebra. It's fascinating. So anyway, white is critical like salt. Salt is absolutely crucial. I mean, we're so, we got so far into the most toxic salt ever. We divorced ourselves from our natural relationship of the importance of salt. And salts are white. But is it a white pigment? Well, it's absorbing all the other pigments and reflecting back to you white. That's kind of how it works. So, for example, blue absorbs red, orange, yellow, a little bit of green, and a little bit of purple, and ultraviolet, and then reflects to you blue. So a blue pigment will actually have that property. So white will absorb every other color and then reflect to you white. It's a weird thing. Now let's get on to this whole thing on snow. Snow it's an atmospheric water, so it's very positively charged. It has cosmic forces in it rather than telluric forces. Telluric forces are forces that come out of the earth. So the cosmic forces are forces that come out of the cosmos and the heavens above. And therefore I wouldn't really drink snow even if we lived thousands of years ago before there was chemtrails. So yeah, but with the chemtrailing that's going on and there's just no, North America is so, the atmosphere of North America is so sick. Like when you get to Hawaii or you get to the North Atlantic or you get to the southern hemisphere and you see healthy clouds like in Peru, you start going, whoa, I haven't seen that since I was a kid. And some of us are, not fortunate enough to even have been alive before they started heavily chemtrailing the whole planet. But it's mostly the northern hemisphere the atmosphere is very sick. And therefore, I wouldn't drink the rain or the snow or anything coming out of the northern hemisphere. It's just too ill. Now, when the water is processed through the earth and filtered through stones and rock and carbon and calcium layers and shale, then as the spring water coming back up out of the earth in the northern hemisphere, I would drink that way before any other water, for sure. But just to point out, atmospheric water generally is not the right water to drink. I know this because my friends on the Big Island have been drinking atmospheric water for years, and it's just not hydrating. It just will not get the job done. Same with these water accumulators that pull water out of the atmosphere. It's not hydrating. It's too atmospheric. And so, you need to then correct it and bring it earth forces and telluric forces into it to kind of get the right charge, the negative charge onto the water, which I've helped a lot of guys on the Big Island design systems, water systems, in order to do that. In order to do that, you need to run the water through carbon filters to get that carbon back. You need to ground the water system so it's touching the earth. You need to get vortex action happening, and there's other things that have to occur to make atmospheric water drinkable.
Awesome. That's great that you're doing that, David. Thank you for, making sure that people know about it and then assisting them on top of it. That goes a long way. So thanks so much for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So we have another question from Vanessa, who would like to know if you could recommend what the most colorful pigment during pregnancy might be as far as her food.
The most important pigment during pregnancy is black. And the most important pregnancy herb it's actually the most widely used in the history of the world. Actually, it's been used more than any other single herbal substance for pregnancy ever, and that's euphemia, which is a bark in Chinese medicine. And the inner part of the bark is black. So that's its signature, kind of tells you. It contains a latexy type of material in it that strengthens your connective tissue. It's also very good for bones and ligaments and tendons and joints. And that material, that black material, is actually alcohol soluble. So alcohol extracts of euphemia are very effective. They're really good. And I really like them. It's kind of a taste, it's got a pretty strong taste. Not too terrible, but after doing it a lot, you kind of go, well, I got to take a break from that. So that's the one. And euphemia is spelled Eucommia.
All right.
Which would also mean, by the way, that chaga is very good for pregnancy, and other black super herbs, Romania, things of that nature. Which, by the way, just as a point of reference, the great super herbs are way, way safer than food. Way safer than food to consume. Way more tested than food.
Wow.
In the history, over the history of the world.
Yeah, that makes sense. They've been around longer. They've got a longer track record, and they're medicinal, foods too. They're not just any old thing. Awesome. Well, good. So there you go, Vanessa. I hope that helps you out. And let's see, we have Karen McDonald who would like to know, here's her question, David. Having journeyed around the world, have you found your true love, Divine Ray?
Have I found my true love and divine ray? Yeah, it's called planting and growing food. That's what I like to do. That's my favorite hobby. Whenever I get a break from the computer, I'm out in the yard, pollinating vanillas, doing alchemical things to cacao trees. For example, one of the things I really like to do and I'm really into, and I've been doing it for a lot of years, is farming using beach sand and corals from the beach and bringing them up here on the Mauka side. In Hawaii we say Makai, which is the ocean side, or Mauka, which is mountainside. I'm mountainside. I'm not next to the ocean. And in order to get that alchemy, you want that mystical union of opposites. You take something from the ocean, you bring it to the mountains. And so that I've been working with that for a lot of years, and that's how my brain works. It's like somebody comes to me and they're like, real popular in the shamanic world right now or rapés. Rapé. It's like a shamanic snuff from the Amazon where you take tobacco mixed with certain ashes and different barks and of different trees, and then you go poof and you blow it up the nose. I don't know if you guys have ever done that or heard about that.
Yeah.
But
I have.
When it comes to that kind of stuff, it's like that's how my brain works. I know how to make that stuff. I know exactly how to grow it. If you want to get me on my strong suit, things like that, I'm really, really good at. That's how my brain works. And so that's what I like to do when I'm not, that's my true love. It's like that kind of stuff.
Yes. Diving deeper and following your heart.
Yes.
Okay, we have a question from Ali Pie who says, what are the best foods for kidney health and what herbs can be used to support the kidneys?
Okay, so the first layer of this is water and salt. Super important. Now I'm just going to do this salt thing real fast. Listen closely. Basically, all the salt we've been consuming all our lives before we became conscious about food is a total scientific, well, it's not even scientific, it's an anti-scientific chemical experiment that's been going on in the human race for about 100 years, where we've been kiln drying the salt, cooking off the trace minerals, usually our rock salt, and then we cook off the 15% trace minerals, sell them to chemical companies. Almost all chemicals used in the world, all the chemical crap used by Monsanto, all that stuff originally comes from salt. So we cook off those trace minerals, we take the remaining sodium chloride, recongeal it back together at high heat, really bonding it, turning it into a 98 to 99% sodium chloride, then add things like we iodize it, or we put anti-caking agents into it, or whatever weird stuff goes on. Genetically modified dextrin is added to it. Then that stuff is called salt, and it's used as a preservative in all processed chemical conventional foods. And that then when we get silted up with that stuff over our lifetime, then we get onto the anti-salt bandwagon, which is all salt is bad, salt's the worst thing ever, which is kind of like, that's the reactionary nature of kind of like raw foodists, and it's also the reactionary nature of people who become conscious, and they're like, oh my God, I've been poisoned my whole life, what's going on? Mm-hmm. And so it's not salt that's bad, it's that kind of salt that's bad. It's like saying that all food is bad because fast food is bad. So we need to get into right relationship with salt. To get into right relationship with salt, I recommend whenever you have the chance to actually understand and uncode and unpack inside your own consciousness how to forage for salt naturally, which was totally a life skill that all our ancestors relied on. You had to have that skill to be able to forage salt naturally, and you do have that skill now. You just need to tune into it. Now, the easiest salts to get at are sea salts, and in certain perfect environments, usually on coves or rock formations, the waves will come up on the rocks on full moon, high tide, and it's going to be high tide here in about 2 hours, and on the full moon. So right now, somewhere on these islands are areas that are getting the highest breaking waves, and they'll get little pools, but then the water will recede back down as the moon goes towards new, and the whole water drops back closer to the earth, and then those places will crystallize out salt. And then you could go and get your own wild sea salts, which is a hobby that I like to do, and I recommend that everybody do, because it teaches you about salt and what a real living salt is. Mm-hmm. So the first step for kidney health is water and salt. If you have too much water, you get dehydrated. If you have too little water, you get dehydrated. If you have too much salt, you get dehydrated. If you have too little salt, you get dehydrated. So we've got to do the salt switch, get the sea salt, and then find the right amount. And that means that you may need to add water or add salt to your water, which I recommend for, anybody who's like an athlete or anybody who's like doing a lot of physical exercise. If you want to have more endurance and you want to have more power, start adding sea salt to your water, and then also you get more hydrated, so you need to drink less water, so you actually are exposing yourself to less contaminants from the environment, because water as a contaminant, or contaminated water in the environment, is one of the biggest ways that we get chemicals into our body. So it'd be nice to be hydrated with less water, and the way you do that is adding sea salt to the water.
Okay, so David, I'm on my way to the gym. I'm doing a really intense, high-intensity CrossFit type workout. I have a liter of water. How much salt should I add?
Put in 2 pinches of sea salt into the water.
Okay, so not a whole lot.
You may find that you do less. You may find you do more. I found that I have often done illegal amounts of salt because that's what I needed at that time, especially if you travel a lot, because you're basically you're getting fried. And so in order to protect yourself when you're up in the atmosphere, you need more hydration. And the only way to hold more water onto your body, stay more hydrated, is water and the right amount of salt. And that's the best thing for your kidneys, is that right balance of water and salt. The second thing on kidneys is the whole cucumber family, and whether it's baked squash or raw cucumbers or pumpkin seeds or squash seeds, those are really good kidney foods overall and in general. And then the third tier would be the super herbs that are designed for basically, kidney support. And those would be things like prepared Rehmannia root, prepared organic Rehmannia root, and kind of hard to find the organic stuff. That's something I've been, working on sourcing for many years, and finally did source it, and we have that at Longevity Warehouse. That's an incredible product and difficult to find organic. And another one is Ho Shou Wu, which is one of the great kidney supporting herbs. Another one is Chaga mushroom, another great one. Other ones in that group would be Schizandra. Schizandra is really good tonic for the kidneys, and it goes on like that. So, that's the basic breakdown, 3 tiers of how to nourish your kidneys.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So there you go, Allie. I hope that helps you out. I'm taking notes.
Yeah, I'm going to go put some salt in my water right now before I go work out.
Yeah, nice. Well, let's see. Well, we have a lot more questions, but how's everybody doing on time?
I'm good over here.
Okay. And how are you doing, Hava? Okay. Let's see. Some of these I'm not sure like what they're saying. Let's see. They're not about food or anything at all. Let's see. David, where's the best place to be during the pole shift, and what's he doing to prepare for what are you doing to prepare for this event? Thoughts on Cypress Hill area by Calgary.
Okay, I don't know the Cypress Hill area by Calgary. So there's different theories about the Earth. There's theories of slow change, which is, what we want to believe, and that's kind of the conventional theory, tectonic plates, crashing into each other relatively slowly, and a slow volcanic, struggle on, in the Earth's crust that develops over time. And that's definitely happening, but there is a lot of evidence that cataclysmic changes have occurred in the Earth's history. For example, those islands in northern Russia they're actually northern Siberia, where there's like hundreds and thousands of elephants, of mammoths that are all piled up on top of each other with every other animal that was grazing on those grasslands, and they're all piled up and shoved up into the Arctic and then frozen within 23 hours. We know that by the way that their tissue is. It was actually frozen within 23 hours. So that was obviously some kind of a cataclysmic event. And that 50% of the world's ivory came from those regions for most of the world's history. Mm. So that's, amazing, like to go, whoa, some cataclysmic stuff has happened on this planet. We suspect that from meteor strikes and that kind of a thing. And then there's the whole path of the pole concept, which was, I think, pretty well described in Charles Hapgood's book, Path of the Pole. And in that book, he talks about signs of, or well, he talks about, at least 76 times that we know of the pole has changed, because when lava is flowing, it will, when it solidifies, it will always crystallize to where the North Pole is and where the South Pole is. So always aligned. So through going through lava layers, you can see that, whoa, in this stage, this pole was there. In this stage, the pole was over there. And we've documented now at least 70-something times in the Earth's history where the pole has changed. Now, there's theories like, well, how could that even happen? Because how can the Earth actually, shift if the ball is spinning? And so the idea is that there's an inner ball, and the outer skin of the Earth can move over the inner ball, which means that the actual outer skin can change even though the rotational ball underneath is still going in the same basic pattern. That's one theory. That makes it more real, because some folks can't get past that particular quandary of how do we actually explain that? And so it goes on like this. So anyway, we're due for one. The last one is a very big one. Something really cataclysmic happened about 11,000 years ago, 12,000 years ago in the Earth's history. Something really cataclysmic. And so that was probably the fall of Atlantis. We know that there are artifacts all over the world that are all connected. We know that there are maps that exist. Charles Hapgood wrote a book on that called The Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings that had Antarctica accurately mapped, and these were maps in the 1500s that were probably copies of more ancient Atlantean maps that came from the way past. So there's definitely, we are the inheritors of a much more ancient civilization that had been a worldwide civilization and had been present all over the whole planet. And that came to a crash, or a major crash, and probably lingered on in Egypt for some time afterwards until Egypt finally crashed. And the people who were running that civilization, the Atlanteans, were probably not us. They were probably they were Homo something else. They weren't Homo sapiens. And the reason why I say that is because there's so much evidence of the Atlantean skulls, the elongated skulls, which I photograph as a hobby. Whenever I'm in South America, I seek out exotic museums and photograph Atlantean skulls that have been dug up in Tiwanaku and Machu Picchu and Cuzco that are not our skulls. They're the skulls of beings that have a different facial and head shape, and they're associated with the pyramids, with Ollantaytambo and Saxe Woman and Machu Picchu and these Atlantean sites all over the world. So anyway, we're headed for another one, and it depends on your theory of reality. I mean, my friend Jem, who runs our nonprofit, his thing is, hey, if cataclysm is going to happen, I want to be right in the middle of it. For me personally, I like Hawaii. Hawaii has survived cataclysms in the past and will survive future ones. And I also like the Andes. The Andes are proof that great civilizations have survived world cataclysms in the highland valleys of the Andes, including the Sacred Valley. That's another place I would recommend. North America is a very barbaric place geologically, in my opinion. It's an energy that comes out of the earth in North America that creates a very barbaric kind of vibration. And most likely North America will turn into, in the next 200, 300, 400 years, will turn into complete chaos, with the exception of Quebec, which I see as being very culturally and geologically stable as compared to every other part of North America. So, my bet would be that out of all of North America, Quebec would be the best spot in terms of surviving, the next 1,000 years.
Watch out, Quebec. Here we come. Wow. That's amazing. And, there's so much to all of that. And, just in you talking right now, I just really getting activated. My crown was really activated talking about Atlantis. So, I'm sure a lot of people experience that type of thing and, realize that there's definitely a lot to this. And if you're feeling it and your heart tells you, then go in that direction and see what you find.
Yeah, I think and we got to be careful about the doom and gloom reports, because there's a huge amount of the population is just completely into the doom and gloom report. Meanwhile, yeah, it is the worst that it's ever been, and it's also the best it's ever been. So you got to be careful about the doom and gloom report because it's just going to suck you into that reality, which is where attention goes, energy flows. The next thing you know, you're going to be like knee deep in conspiracy theories, doom and gloom, and your life's ruined. The other side of it is, hey, okay, that's all nice and good, whatever. Yeah, the planet's doomed and whatever. And it's also the best ever by far that it's ever been by far. And we need to focus on that, and that will expand.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I choose option B. Okay, so let's see. Let's go for one more here. It's hard to pick. Maybe we'll do two more. Karen is asking, David, what is your RH factor? Is it positive or negative, and how does that pertain to eating raw foods?
That's another factor to consider in your overall diet, and that is your blood type. So I'm an O negative, and so that, so I'm an O negatives are like apparently are like the most alien, of the human race. There's a whole thing on that all over the internet, so you might want to check that out.
And all Pleiadians are AB positive.
Yeah, there's a whole thing on the blood types, and it's an interesting discussion for sure. But the thing I want to say is that if you're a blood type A, you have to be really careful about just anything goes, kind of diet, which is basically like, just eat as much fish, chicken, meat, dairy products. Blood type A's can't really withstand that, and it's the biggest anomaly in all blood type research, and that is blood type A's have the shortest lifespan if they don't pay attention to what they're eating. So, so that's an important thing. Now, this is a very good example of what I'm talking about with the whole lowest common denominator, super low vibrational kind of energy that the human race just is literally addicted to.
Right.
And that is, what did we hear? We all heard that if you're a blood type O, you need to be a carnivore, right? That's what we heard.
Right.
That actually has nothing to do with the statistical evidence about blood type diets. If we get into the statistical evidence, if a blood type A tries to be an anything goes carnivore, they will lose 24 years of lifespan. That's the actual truth. So I just want to kind of put that out there. That whole point is very symptomatic of just that thing I've been trying to point at, like that super weird low vibrational, whatever that is.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? It's like, well, why don't we just tell people that actually if you're blood type A, you shouldn't be an anything goes carnivore, instead of telling blood type O's that if you're blood type O, you need to be a carnivore.
Right. Yeah. It's funny because, and it's really been kind of ingrained into the nutritional world for a while now, because anytime I think of a blood type O, I see a lion, I see Africa, and it's like, oh, okay, well, that's because this kind of whole, myth and just one way of looking at things have been, put out there in a really broad spectrum, because I've never even read these books about that, and that's the vision I get, but it also makes sense. Mine is AB positive, and, it only took me till, my mid-30s before, I started to become very ill from I thought I was living a healthy lifestyle, so, and it just wasn't for me, and it's an interesting thing to look at.
Yeah, for sure.
Hava, what were you saying?
I was not.
I thought you started to say something. Okay.
What's
our
next question?
So let's see. Let's do the last question. Okay, this one's really a fascinating one. How do we prepare preparation? It doesn't really make sense. Preparation childbearing, fasting to be Solarian. This is her question. Preparation childbearing, fasting to be Solarian? ?
Okay, I'm not really sure what the question is. I will say this about, so this is another kind of reactionary thing, very common in the raw food scene and just, kind of the conscious food scene, is we react to an extreme which may not be appropriate. So for the developing child and the pregnant woman, it's a different type of nutrition than if you're already constructed 40-year-old adult. Totally different type of nutrition. Super important to get that too. Here's another factor in your diet and nutrition. It's what age are you? Where are you in the life cycle? You getting pregnant? Are you raising kids? Do you have 5-year-olds in the house? You know, are you 80? You know, where are you in that overall mix? Because when you're 20 to 40, you could be a vegan a lot easier than when you're 0 to 5. It's a super important thing. Now, as you get older and you get into like 60s, 70s, 80s, that's when certain things are more important. For example, like vitamin K2 from cheese is more important at that age. Vitamin K2 is very important 0 to 5.
Right.
There's certain nutrients that make more sense, whereas when you're 20 to 40, you don't really need those nutrients. And, you know, you'd be a vegan, but cheese is not obviously vegan. But it could be actually. You could make a nut cheese that has vitamin K2 in it. It's possible to make it that way. So that whole thing about pregnancy is there's 3 foods that I would really recommend that are important for pregnant women. They're actually crucial. One of them is ghee or butter, and that's for a cholesterol formation, have enough cholesterol. 2 is eggs, and 3 is cheese. And those are also very important foods. You know, if you're going to be a vegetarian, you can do a vegetarian. Vegetarian is sustainable. Vegan is not sustainable over generations of time. And so this is the thing about vegans is vegans get super reactionary. You know, when somebody says, "Oh, I can't be a vegan during my pregnancy," and vegans just freak out. And they're like, "Oh my God!" You know, it's like, "Oh my God!" You know,
right?
You got to be careful because you could get caught up in some dangerous stuff. And like veganism for young kids, not a good idea. Mm-hmm. For most young kids. And it's like, why? Because kids need that cholesterol and they need that protein and they need that vitamin K2 as well as many other subtle things that are in cheese, eggs, and butter or ghee. And this is why the yogis, they isolated it down to ghee, which is basically why ghee? Because it contains the pure precursor, cholesterol, for the formation of hormones. And if you don't have that, you can start going deficient in the anabolic hormones like progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, vitamin D3, and then a lot of problems arise from that. And those are very vegan problems, by the way, and they occur quite often. So this is why the yogis thousands of years ago tuned in. They're like, okay, if we need something from the animal world, we need it from, boom, this. And they nailed it down as ghee, which to me is like genius level insight. Mm-hmm. So vegetarianism is very sustainable and doable for thousands of years. Veganism isn't. Now, the whole carnivore story and carnivorism is ultimately, in the polluted world that we live in right now, is ultimately not sustainable either. Because it's not possible to be eating meat every single day and have it come from sources that are clean today.
Right. Exactly. Well, that's a good point that you bring up. Thank you so much for that. Hava, did you have any last questions before we sign off for the day or anything else we need to talk about?
I don't. David, I'm so grateful to be connected with you over all these years and to watch your evolution, which has in turn inspired my own, and you've been really a huge part of my life, without you knowing it. I appreciate your knowledge and your insatiable thirst for all the best things ever. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Awesome. Thank you. This has been great.
Yes, thank you so much. We really appreciate it, and we've had so many people so excited about this show coming up this week. So thank you for being here, and thank you, everybody who's listening. We appreciate your support, and definitely, David, the conference, when's that coming up? That's in April. If they want to come see you and learn and like way more in depth, right?
Yes, absolutely. April 24th through 26th. 2015, longevityconference.com. You can find out all the details there. And we're going to be at the Anaheim Hilton, which is in Anaheim, California, right next to Disneyland. And what an amazing venue. We've got the main ballroom, which to me is that's the preeminent venue in Southern California. So we finally kind of step by step, 14 conferences. This is our 14th conference. We've worked our way up to that amazing space. Really, really good time with people coming in from all over the world. We're expecting 2,000 health enthusiasts there.
Yay! Awesome. And then if they want to go a little more in depth in your books and your readings, they would find that at davidwolfe.com. or at
davidwolfe.com.
longevitywarehouse.com also, right?
Yep, longevitywarehouse.com. And I've got a lot of action going on my Facebook site now, which is facebook.com/David Avocado Wolfe, WOLFE, AVOCADOWOLFE is the last two words in that. And that's really exciting because I have a whole bunch of material that I didn't know what to do with. And all of a sudden I started putting it on Facebook and it just started working. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, you've got. Is that you doing all that? You've been doing some wonderful graphics and quotes, really stepping up the beautiful visual offerings on Facebook on your page. They've been beautiful. People have been sharing the heck out of them.
Mm-hmm.
Right on. Thank you. Yeah, it's myself and my friends, and it's a culmination of really 20 years actually. And I was like, whoa, I could actually just take all this stuff and put it on Facebook, and it's working. So it's really just exciting and it's entertaining and it's fun.
It is. I've been seeing them come through and sharing them myself, so thank you very much for that gift.
Right on. Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you again, David and Hava, and we will be back again next week, so tune in. Next week we have coming up Matt Monarch, right, Hava?
That's right.
All right. So make sure you come on and tune in for Matt Monarch coming up next week. And thank you both so much. Blessings to you and everybody. Have a magnificent week, and we will see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Raw Living Radio. Tune in live on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and listen to all of our previous shows archived at rawlivingradio.com. Visit us on Facebook at Raw Living Radio, and stay tuned for more information about the upcoming Raw Living Expo happening this summer, 2015. In the meantime, stay inspired, love your life, and keep it raw.